All right, what's up, everybody? We're here to talk about a pretty hot topic for a lot of employers. A lot of you probably know that on November 4th, OSHA released their vaccine and testing emergency temporary standard. So today, Doug Fletcher, our partner in the ENCORE Safety Network, resident OSHA expert, is going to talk about it. We're going to try to kind of cover three things. First, we're going to talk about what happened, what is the ETS, high level. Two, we're going to discuss some changes that have the appellate courts have started to press and push out there. And then finally, some proactive plans and strategies that maybe employers need to think about. So I guess at that, Doug, maybe just walk through what is an ETS and what is this one specifically?
Well, that's interesting. The emergency temporary standard. So again, this is a tool that OSHA has available to them if they believe that employees are in grave danger, and that is the language that is actually used in the requirement when they submit this for review. They're not going through typical rulemaking, so this is jumping ahead of the rulemaking process, basically, because they believe, or at least they state in the Federal Register publication, that they believe that employees are in grave danger due to COVID-19 exposure and illness. And so this is a means for them to implement these requirements without having gone through a formal rulemaking process. It's temporary, so they are only temporary. The one that they issued previously for healthcare is about to expire, in fact. It's rolling up on the last 2 weeks of that, I believe. But it was published in the Federal Register on November 5th, which makes that the effective date. And then they've actually included a couple of compliance dates that we need to be aware of. There's a 30-day compliance date, December 5th, and then another 30-day compliance date, January 4th. And so, we're pushing forward, it sounds like.
Yeah, it's so still quite a bit of unknown, really. And I know a lot of people are trying to digest even what the ETS says specifically around testing, around those that are or are not vaccinated.
Right.
A lot of questions there, but I think you and I were talking before we started this that there's already the appellate courts specifically that are getting in and delaying this, questioning it. There's the official word would be putting a stay on it, right?
Right.
I mean, maybe walk through what's going on there and what that means for the ETS itself. What maybe you've seen potentially could be changing or what's going on there.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and we're just following along just like everyone else, but as you mentioned, this particular ETS affects vaccination status. So this is the government's way of driving vaccinations, obviously. Vaccination verification, testing, and masking. So the basics of this would say that you must get your employees must be vaccinated. And in the absence of that, if your employees choose not to be vaccinated, then they would be required to provide a negative COVID test on a 7-day rotating basis. So every 7 days, they would have to be able to provide a negative test in order to come into the workplace. There are masking requirements, so unvaccinated employees would be required to wear masks in those situations that we've been following all along when you are in proximity to other employees or customers, whatever the case might be. There are certainly exceptions to that we can talk about in more detail later. People that work outside, for example, employees that work in isolation, maybe they work by themselves, those kind of things. But this applies to those employers company-wide, corporation-wide, establishment-wide that have 100 or more employees.
So
it's interesting.
Yeah, so it is. So I think that you talked about it there. It's only required of certain employers, 100 plus. It's obviously is definitely a government requirement. Excuse me. So I think those are probably two of the driving factors behind what we're seeing, where we're getting some pushback at the appellate court level, right? So maybe
yes. Oh, I'm sorry. So the appellate court.
Walk through that.
Yeah. So as of Friday, this was promulgated in the Federal Register, and everybody can go read this. It's 500 pages. Enjoy yourselves.
Yeah, right.
And but only about 15 pages of it are actually the regulation. The preamble is the other 485 pages. There's a preamble, and then there is an economic assessment, what the economic impact of this will be, which they're required to provide. But on Saturday, the 6th of November, a number of different organizations and state government entities filed suit against OSHA in their respective appellate courts. the different circuit courts. And so the Fifth Circuit actually, which is Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, the Fifth Circuit has already put a stay on this ETS. And so in that circuit, the ETS will not go forward until it's been reviewed by the court. The Eighth Circuit, which we are a part of, Nebraska is a part of the Eighth Circuit, has already filed suit. The 11th Circuit, some of the others, and you could probably guess them based on geographic location who has filed suit against this. But those are also being evaluated, and there will be each of those circuits will then determine whether or not they're going to follow suit and stay it as well.
Yeah, it's such an interesting dynamic. We've heard from a lot of our clients and plenty of employers out there that are saying, man, that if this puts us at a potential disadvantage or certainly a significant risk if we're one of those employers that has over 100 people and now we have to adhere to this, whether we want to or not. That's all. There's a whole conversation there, but we have to adhere to this. Other employers don't. Are we at risk of potentially losing employees? And now you talk about geographically, we may have stays in certain districts and not in others, or they may all come along. So there's a lot of unknown out there for employers. It's a significant risk. It's already hard enough, as we know, to find people the way it is, and then you add more challenges. So let's maybe transition to.
So let me just say one quick thing about that. Yeah. When you are calculating whether or not the ETS applies to you, you include all employees except temps.
Okay.
They have excluded temporary employees.
All right.
Temporary employees will go on to the temporary employee services count.
Interesting. Okay.
So we count full-time employees, hourly employees, part-time employees, those kind of people, but we don't count temps in that. So first of all, you determine whether you have a 100 or more in that in that company. This is not buildings, but in your company.
Yeah.
A specific entity,
right.
Legal entity. The second thing is you count everybody in that, but when you apply the ETS, it does not apply to those workers that work outside.
Right.
So the construction companies may not have to deal with it if they work outside, right? Or at least not for those employees.
Right.
Or if you work in isolation, or if you're working from home. It goes into the total count, but you don't have to apply it to those people.
Interesting.
Which is very interesting.
So see, those are all the things, so many unknowns, so many moving pieces and parts to it. So then maybe the last piece of this that we kind of talked about at the beginning is maybe transitioning to, you've been doing a lot of research. What are the things that employers that this likely is going to impact? What are the things they need to be thinking about now to plan and prepare?
Yeah, that's great. So if, for example, if the Fifth Circuit lifts its stay, things will go forward, right? Or in those circuits, those areas where there is no stay, we have to be moving forward. So employers under this ETS are required to develop and implement a program for vaccination and testing and mask use. And so we need to be working on that in the meantime, I think. it would be remiss just to sit and wait. You can be working on these things. So you need to determine whether or not you are going to have a hard mandate for vaccinations or a soft mandate. If you have a hard mandate that says everyone will be vaccinated or you're not working here, then you don't have to do the other stuff. But if you have a soft mandate, which you are permitted to do, everybody needs to be vaccinated or they will need to do the testing. And it's interesting to me, so you probably need to be working on this program in the meantime, determining how you want to approach this. And then you could be determining who's vaccinated. If you haven't already done that, you can determine who's vaccinated. In the regulation, they talk about how to verify that. And, you can check, the vaccination cards. You can check other medical records. They even allow for, an employee to certify. If they can't find their card, they can certify in writing that they have been vaccinated, which I think is a little wild. The testing. How are we going to do testing? OSHA has said in this, which again I find amazing, the employer is not responsible for the testing. That burden is on the employee. They want vaccinations so badly that they are going to, which they would never otherwise do this, put the cost of being vaccinated, or being tested, on the employee. And then how are we going to do that? You could use an FDA approved home test. I don't know if you can get them off, at Walgreens or whatever, but you could just imagine, I wish I had that money in home testing, because You can use a home test, but you cannot allow the employee to administer and evaluate their own test. There has to be some proctor of that test result. So the employer is going to have to determine how they're going to do that. So there are things that you can be doing now that you should be doing, in my opinion, in preparation for this. If it goes away, fine. But if it doesn't, I don't think you want to be caught on December 5th or January 4th without having done anything to prepare. I think then you would really be rushing. So,
well, there's lots of talks about it in here too, about creating formal policies and procedures.
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
So I think those are the things that any employer that's watching this, thinking about it, you know, we've talked about high level what rolled out last week. We've talked about some of the changes. There's probably plenty more that are yet to come. So, you know, the next few weeks, we're going to learn a lot.
Yes.
But I think regardless of what's going to happen as employers, we really need to start thinking and assuming if this rolls forward, what are we going to do?
Right.
What are our plans? How are we going to protect our people, our interests, and do things, you know, within what the ETS suggests we need to do? And so that'd be my encouragement to everybody that watches this. There's tons of resources, you know, for our ENCORE Safety Network clients and other clients that have access to the ENCORE Connect portal. There's a lot of information.
Send in your questions, post your questions, and we can try to answer those questions.
Absolutely. We'd love to field the questions. Doug will be able to answer them. I'm sure the What's the Hazard podcast will be talking about this.
About it. Yeah, man.
Yep.
So there are a lot of resources.
Yeah, they're everywhere. So get out there, look for them. Please ask us questions. You know, Doug and I and our team are available as much as possible. But we're going to keep a real pulse on this because we know it's important to all of our clients and a lot of businesses around. So hopefully this was helpful. Again, reach out to our team. Otherwise, you know what? We're all going to navigate through this together, and we'll be here as a resource.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Good luck.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, man.